Hi everybody. So the intention of this video is by the end of this video to give you very high level and broad instructions on how to create your own ChatGPT like large language model for $100. And so that's the goal by the end. The first thing that I want to show you is how exactly you would go about doing this and building out your own like chat GPT and then training it up and how it would initially cost you a lot more than $100. And I think that this video will also give you a good idea and example of how scalability works within this industry, as well as the fact that as more people start iterating on these things, it gets cheaper as more people develop and give access to what they've developed and how they've done it and what they've trained on, and then people can utilize the training from their model, for example, to train their own models, which is what we're going to run into in the end of this video, to get to a place where it can be a lot cheaper and where you could now, theoretically, if you wanted to, build out your own large language model that would be very equivalent to like ChatGPT 3 for about $100. So the very first thing that we want to do is go to Spaces here. This is our friend Hugging Face. And then the very first thing from Spaces, if we click here, we'll see Alpaca lore test, very popular space that's running right now. And then if we clicked into Alpaca, essentially what we can see is just that Alpaca is running off of the GPT Neo framework, and then we can also see the data set. So the very first thing that I want to do and to highlight is show like this, like what this is saying up front and immediately is that this Alpaca model and this Alpaca AI is based off of the work of this GPT Neo. So let's take a look at GPT Neo. We take a look at GPT Neo here. There's a few things that we can highlight, and I think the first thing that I'll go into is just off the top, because you'll see all of these up here, like in every single thing that you click on within Hugging Face. But so I'll just go over the major ones. So we can see that this is a text generation model or a large language model, kind of like again like ChatGPT would be the equivalent here. We can see that it would be written, so you want to use a particular framework called PyTorch or SciTorch. I like, as I learn these things, I learn first through literature and reading, and then oftentimes I like come up with my own pronunciations before I know what the actual pronunciation is. So to me, it's SciTorch. It just makes more sense in my head than like PyTorch. But I understand also too how PyTorch can make sense there. But so moving on from there, we also we can see JAX. JAX is it's referred to. It's a class of just-in-time compilers, and then so what JAX does is makes your compiling of your code a lot more efficient. So when we're talking about like large language models and what we want to do with deep learning, JAX is a very important thing. Same thing with Rust. Well, not same. Rust is a programming language, and utilized really heavily when you go into like deep learning and AI models. And then Transformers is a Hugging Face library that can utilize to access the library and then get different like functionality and features for the AI model. And then those are the major ones, the major tags that we'll go over here. And then diving deeper into GPT Neo 2.7b. Just off the top, I can tell that the 2.7b is significant. The 2.7b is, I'm assuming, and I already know, is going to relate to performance. And then so if we scroll down, we can see just a description. It's a large language model, and then the 2.7b represents the number of parameters that of the particular model. So like that's the upper level performance, and then we'll see some benchmarks when we go down. Just a little bit more here, showing you what the data it was trained on. If you're interested in this specific data set, they give you access to that and show you what the specific data set that it was trained on. I think so. This is the important thing to highlight to me. So whoever did this, and I don't know, I'm assuming it's either an individual person or like an organization, but if it's an individual person, they spent about so this would be the equivalent of about like $25,000 to train this AI is what they invested in this. So if you want ChatGPT, if you want to build GPT Neo, your own, it's about $25,000. And then it's important to note here too. So like GPT Neo, how does that name come up? What's like and Alpaca is very different than GPT Neo. When you come up with your own framework and model, you create your own AI. Essentially, at this moment, at least, you get to name it anything that you want. And then this person decided to name their particular AI instance GPT Neo. GPT Neo 2.7b, and then in a little bit we'll go over to Alpaca and then talk about Alpaca, which is based off of GPT Neo 2.7b. Alpaca would not exist if GPT Neo 2.7b didn't exist, which is why we're starting and talking about GPT Neo. That makes sense. So going down, essentially we can see how to use, and then it's got limitations and biases. I think that this is extremely important to note, and then especially when you're talking about with a large language model. You can see here it can contain profanity, lewdness, abrasive language. It can produce socially unacceptable text up front. Like if you run this, if you build out a model, and if you build out a large language model, up front and very upfront, it's going to have these considerations that you very much have to work through, or don't. But it's going to have these limitations and these things no matter what within it. And then so they're just highlighting that there. And then this is like benchmark results. And then just the important thing to highlight here is that like on some of these tests, this GPT Neo is benchmarking with, or in some instances benchmarking above GPT-3. So for $25,000, this person got their own in some instances better than GPT-3 for their own personal use. So that's kind of pretty cool that you can do that. And then so what we can see is GPT Neo wouldn't exist period at all if GPT-3 and its GPT-2 and all of its predecessors hadn't come before it, which were very expensive. And then when you get down to the level that this person decided to, when they want to build out GPT Neo, they decide that they want to go that, and then they make essentially a $25,000 investment, plus everything that they would need in regards towards background experience to do this, and then they get GPT Neo. And then so from GPT Neo, we're now essentially what I think would be, again, if you want to, the point of this video is if you wanted to build out your own GPT, like ChatGPT model for $100, I would use this particular space, the Alpaca space, and the model that's put out here. And then so again, Alpaca's put out and built out by Stanford, and then so they give you all of the documentation and then the entire training recipe of Alpaca, and then essentially what it's based off of and how it works. So at a base level, Alpaca would not exist if the Text DaVinci 003 model didn't exist, and then if Text DaVinci 003 didn't exist, then essentially Meta's Llama model wouldn't exist. And then so what this is showing then is that Alpaca is fundamentally based off of Meta's Llama framework, and then so we can then also infer why they're calling it Alpaca, because Llama and Alpaca are related, and then so that gets us to Alpaca, which is the framework and model that we're talking about here. And then the major thing to note, and where it comes full circle within this video, is so what these researchers at Stanford did was take this Alpaca model, which again highlighting its they base a lot of it off of this GPT, off of this framework, this GPT Neo framework, which wouldn't exist without a lot of other frameworks. But at its core, it's the TextDaVinci 003, which is the predecessor to Meta's Llama framework, which leads us to Alpaca. Bottom line is again, like to point out that all of this is collaborative, and then so the more collaborative efforts that people are putting into these things, the cheaper and cheaper things get. Like, and so the fact that you can get Alpaca existing, and the fact that Alpaca can exist and can do this is really what I want to highlight. It wouldn't happen, and this wouldn't be possible if Meta Llama didn't exist, and Meta Llama, it wouldn't be possible if TextDaVinci didn't exist. And then that can be for any AI. But diving deeper and bringing us back here, what we can see is that when these researchers brought up and started training the Alpaca model, they were able to train it on essentially 3 hours of training, because they were able to utilize all of the existing data sets and the existing training from Neo. And then so because of that, they were able to do and then benchmark out and get a working ChatGPT Lite, essentially, is what I would call this model for $100. And then so really simple, if you want to actually access Alpaca, again, it's just from that spaces there, and then you can get essentially full access to everything that you would need to run, and then also anything that you need as far as the data set is also available. They put out everything on GitHub, the READMEs, everything, all of the literature that you would need. So if you want to build Alpaca, you want your own GPT Lite, you have all of the instructions, everything that you need. It's just straight up, just go to Hugging Space, and then you have everything that you need from GitHub, and then you also have everything that you need that Stanford puts out in all of the documentation, and then you also have everything that you need as far as prior training, because of the fact that someone was willing enough to gift the world GPT Neo, and they put in the time and effort to build out and train GPT Neo, and then GPT Neo was able to be utilized by Stanford researchers to build off of that existing framework, and then give the world Alpaca, which essentially is allows you to for $100, give or take, get your own ChatGPT Lite. And then the area where I'll end this video on is that I would say, I think it's very clear to say and upfront that if you build your own Alpaca and then you give your Alpaca the 3 hours of training, it's not, your Alpaca is not going to outclass GPT Neo. That's not the goal of Alpaca. It's not to be more powerful than GPT Neo. It's to utilize the work that went into GPT Neo, and then make that more efficient, more costly, or more cost efficient, and more efficient across the board. And then so this is just the next iteration. Again, it's cheaper. It's just like any other advancement in technology or advancement in any other product. Alpaca is cheaper inherently, and far significantly cheaper inherently than GPT Neo, because it's just different generationally, and we've advanced because of GPT Neo, and because of its existence, we've advanced to make this so much cheaper. Hope this is educational for everyone, and I hope that at least some of this sticks. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe. I'm putting out more and more content around AI ethics specifically is kind of what my major focus is, but I want to make AI accessible to anyone, and try to break down these concepts to anyone, for anyone to understand. Thank you very much.